Welcome to the latest episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. This is episode 222, How to Read the Nutrition Facts Panel, the Basics. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Real World Nutrition and Happy New Year. This is the first episode of 2026. And this episode is part 1 of 2 that I'm doing on how to read the Nutrition Facts Panel. Now, back in episodes 214 and 215, where I talked about deconstructing food labels, I realized and even mentioned in that episode that I had not addressed the Nutrition Facts Panel in this podcast. So here it is. I recently updated a 4-part series of articles related to this topic. So this episode covers 2 of those articles, and next week's episode will cover the other 2. And I have links to those 4 articles in the show notes. Now, part of me remembers or didn't realize I hadn't talked about this before because I talk about the Nutrition Facts Panel so much in real life. I teach classes on this, and I devote an entire section in my college classes about this part of nutrition, what I refer to as nutrition literally at our fingertips. And so most people have seen the Nutrition Facts Panel more times than they can count. It's on pretty much all the food we eat. It's on cereal boxes, it's on snack foods, it's on frozen meals, it's on beverages, and even foods that feel like they should be simple, like a bag of frozen green beans still has to have a Nutrition Facts Panel, even if that's the only ingredient in there. And even though it's a very familiar thing for most people, it really is one of the more confusing things for a lot of people. So the Nutrition Facts Panel has a lot of information on there. And a lot of people have ideas of what it says or what it's saying to them when they look at it. But I find when I teach this to people or explain it to people, turns out they don't have the full understanding of what everything says on there. And this is not to lay blame on individuals. It's not a personal failure. Confusion is normal. But it really is a reflection of how much information is packed into a very small space, how nutrition information or nutrition language can get misused or misunderstood, and how often labels are talked about without the full context. So, as I mentioned, this episode is the first of the 2 episodes on how to read it. Today is talking about the basics, the serving size, the servings per container, calories, fats, cholesterol, carbohydrates, and protein. So it's a lot. Next week is covering the vitamins and minerals and the percent daily values that's on there. And so I want to make this clear. The goal here is to not tell anyone what to eat or what not to eat. It really is to help with understanding. Labels are tools. They provide information, and what you choose to do with that information is up to you. And I also mentioned this. The information is required to be there. I help educate people on how to understand that information. So, first up, I want to say this before I want to get into the nitty-gritty of what is on that label. It helps to understand that not every food is required to have that Nutrition Facts Panel. So first up, alcohol is regulated by a different agency from the Food and Drug Administration. So you may not see nutrition facts on beer, wine, or spirits. I do see it on occasion, but it's not required. Things like coffee, tea, spices, they don't have to have labels on them, the nutrition facts label, because they don't contain measurable amounts of nutrients. Now, something like coffee that's like not just coffee, but is a flavored coffee, a caramel latte in a can or something like that, that does have to have the nutrition facts information. I'm talking about plain bag tea or plain coffee, ground coffee, or coffee beans. Then other things like foods prepared at a deli counter, like salads or hot foods, they're not required to have labels. Also, raw fruits and vegetables are exempt. unless a store chooses to post the nutrition information nearby. So think about this. If you picked up a bunch of bananas or an apple or a pear, where are you going to find that nutrition information? There's that little code that tells the cash register what the food is, but there's been a lot of discussion on how to get this nutrition information to people, but really, it's just not required right now. And then another thing here is bulk foods rely on the information to be posted on the original packaging. So, for example, if I buy a big bag of Halloween candy, all of those little individual candies don't need to have the nutrition facts label on it. The original bag or packaging does. And then cuts of meat, like in the butcher section of the grocery store, for example, it does have nutrition facts panels, but because weights vary, it's really based on the amount per ounce or per whatever the unit is, but it will not necessarily list servings per container, which is what I'm going to get into in a minute. So just want to put that as a background there, because knowing that helps explain why labels might be inconsistent or not even there on some foods. So I want to get into what you will see when the label is there. So I'm just starting on the top, going to work my way down here. And some of these things, again, may seem obvious to you, but again, not everybody understands this. So first up is serving size. Now, serving size is one of the most misunderstood parts of the entire nutrition facts panel based on my experience. So the serving size is not a recommendation. It's not telling you how much you should or limit yourself to. It's not personalized in any way. It's simply the amount that people typically eat based on survey data. So when nutrition facts panels were first introduced in the 1990s, serving sizes reflected the eating patterns at that time. Now, if you go back 30, 35 years, we ate smaller portions back then. So that's where the old half a cup serving of ice cream came from. So on labels in those days, a serving size of ice cream was half a cup. And people love to joke about it now. It was what was the documented average at that time, so that was the amount that was used. And as eating patterns changed, serving sizes were updated to better reflect how people actually eat. So what I want to make clear is that doesn't mean you have to eat that amount. You can eat more, you can eat less. The label's not judging you, the packaging's not a person. And I make this clear because I never thought of this before, but some people have gotten offended by saying, I can only have 2 cookies, I can only have half a cup. Why is it telling me I can only have this much when I want to eat more? That's not what it's saying. A serving size matters for one main reason, that all the other numbers on the nutrition facts panel is based on that specific serving size. Calories, fat, carbohydrates, protein, sodium, everything. So if you eat more than that serving size, if you eat twice that serving, so instead of a half cup, you eat a full cup, you need to double the numbers. If you eat half of it, you drop the numbers accordingly. So it was just saying that serving size is the information, I should say, on the nutrition facts panel is based on that specific serving size. You can eat whatever you want. It's not complicated, but it does require paying attention. So that's why the updated label used a larger or bolder font for the serving size so it's easier to spot. So if you had a side-by-side comparison of the old labels versus the newer labels, and I just blanked on when those were updated. I think it was in 2020. When it became required. The font was smaller on the serving size. Now it's bigger. So if you happen to have a packaged food in front of you or nearby, you can look at it, pick it up, and you'll see the serving size is pretty much not the biggest thing, but a little bit bigger than the other information there. Now, next up is the servings per container. So right above that serving size is servings per container. And this one can surprise people more than anything else. because many packages that look like single servings may not be. For example, again, keep in mind I teach college students. Ramen noodles usually has 2 servings per package. A box of macaroni and cheese has 3 servings per package. What one might consider a regular bag or package of candy, I think of like M&Ms, which may seem like 1 serving, may technically have 2 if you look at the label a little bit more closely. And I explain this for the M&Ms, for example. The label even says on the front, it says tear and share. But most people aren't sharing. So the servings per container multiplied by the serving size gives you a general idea of how much food is in the package. So, for example, if a serving size is 1/4 cup and there's 8 servings per container, that whole package or whole container would have about 2 cups in total. So this is also why some packages or products change how they listed servings. So back in the old days, a 20-ounce soda used to be listed as 2.5 servings because 8 ounces was considered a serving. Now, the entire bottle is listed as 1 serving. So again, this doesn't mean we're recommending people have that entire 20-ounce container. It simply reflects that most people are consuming that entire 20-ounce container. So it's reflecting typical intake patterns. Now, next up is calories. If you're looking at a label, calories are listed in the largest and boldest font on the nutrition facts panel. It's pretty much trying to be in your face, or the idea to make it easier to see, since many people just were missing it and ignoring them, not really paying attention to it. And I'm not saying you have to pay attention to it. I'm just saying that's the information there. And to be clear, calories are a measure of energy. That's it. It's not a moral judgment. It's not a grade on your choices. If you eat the serving size listed, you get the calories listed. If you eat more, you get more. If you eat less, you get less. I know it's pretty straightforward, but not everybody catches that. And one important thing I want people to understand is that these calories, or the numbers there, are averages. There can be about a 20% variation in either direction. That is normal. It's not a gotcha for people, and it may seem like a lot, but it really, consider this. Ingredients vary. Foods vary. Homemade foods vary from batch to batch. If you make a batch of chocolate chip cookies, each cookie is not going to have the exact same amount of calories and nutrients. It's going to vary about 20%. So if a serving of chocolate chip lists 70 calories, it might be closer to 56 calories or 84 calories. And that variation is really not something to stress about. It's not the food manufacturers trying to trick anyone, because people say, well, probably most things are 84. No, it's probably on average 70 calories. Sometimes it'll be 56. Sometimes it'll be 84. Sometimes it might be 63. It's just how food works. So if you think about fruit, let's just take this one more step here. If you had a peach tree in your yard, those peaches would not all have the exact same calorie content. Variation is normal. So there's already enough stress about eating. Calorie variability doesn't need to be added to the list. Just take it at face value. Don't stress about that 20%. Now, the next thing is fats. So everything below calories is tied again to that serving size on the top of the label. And the nutrition facts panel must list total fat, saturated fat, and trans fat. Some foods will also list the monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fat, but those two are optional. Now, all fat contains 9 calories per gram. So total fat includes all types of fat in the food. So Again, if you have a label in front of you, I should have said this from the get-go. Have a label in front of you just for reference. So you may look at a label and you'll see that the total fat doesn't equal the sum of the saturated fat and the trans fat. So if you have something that says trans fat is 0 grams and saturated is 8 grams, but there's 17 grams of total fat, those remaining grams or that difference there usually comes from a combination of the mono and polyunsaturated fats. They're just not required to be listed separately. And trans fats has been required to be on labels since 2006. Artificial trans fats are harmful to our health, really increases our risk of heart disease and other chronic health issues. And most manufacturers have removed them as it was required for them to be removed. So it's rare to see them listed now, but you might still see it here and there. But it's almost always 0 in my experiences. And again, rounding is allowed on labels. So if food contains less than half a gram of fat per serving, so less than 1/2 of a gram of fat per serving or less than 5 calories, it can list 0 grams. This rule applies to saturated fat and trans fat. So if a label is 0, it might still contain a small amount. So checking the ingredient list can help. So going to trans fats, look for the word hydrogenated in the ingredients list. And if it appears high on the list, the food might have some trans fats in it, even if it lists 0. Now, keep in mind what I said about calories. These nuances aren't going to matter. Even if it said you have 0.4 grams of fat per serving, if you had 4 servings, you still wouldn't be getting more than 1.6 grams of that fat. So fat needs vary, I should say, but everyone benefits from keeping the saturated fat lower overall, avoiding trans fats entirely, or as much as possible. And this doesn't mean every food needs to be low in saturated fat. It means the balance across the day matters more than a single food. Now, next on the nutrition facts panel is cholesterol. And it is still listed on the nutrition facts panel, though it's not emphasized the way it once was. For most people, dietary cholesterol has less impact on blood cholesterol than saturated fats and trans fats. Cholesterol is listed in milligrams. It's a general guideline to stay under 300 milligrams per day, but this matters more for some people than others. Most people don't need to pay attention to that. Cholesterol is only found in animal foods. Plant foods do not contain cholesterol. So a label that might highlight something as being cholesterol-free if it's on a plant food is correct, but often unnecessary. And then fat-free dairy, so it is an animal product, but fat-free dairy has no cholesterol because once we remove the fat from a food, it also removes the cholesterol. Once again, if you're paying attention to this or you want to pay attention to this, though most people don't, rounding applies here as well. If a serving contains less than 5 milligrams, the label can list 0. All right. Next up is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates include starch, fiber, and sugar. And total carbohydrates is the sum of all 3 of those. Starch does not usually appear on its own line. It's rare that you see it. Fiber is required to be listed, though the type of fiber does not have to be specified. So it won't list soluble or insoluble fiber separately, just total fiber. And fiber naturally comes from plant foods, though some foods do have added fiber to it. That's a whole other topic here. Now, here's an important thing. Sugar is now listed in 2 parts. Total sugar, which includes both naturally occurring and added sugars. So total sugar is both of those. Added sugars is listed underneath, and that helps show how much sugar was added during processing. So total sugar is both And added sugars is how much of that total sugar is added sugar. So for example, food has 12 grams of total sugar, 4 grams is added sugar. That means 8 grams comes from naturally occurring sugars. So people might wonder, what about where are you getting naturally occurring sugars? Think of a flavored yogurt. Let's say you have vanilla yogurt. Well, lactose is a naturally occurring sugar. You're going to find that in plain, unflavored yogurt. That's naturally occurring sugar. But if there's flavoring added, like vanilla or fruit flavoring, there's going to be some added sugar there. So that's where an example would be. That's one that I used to bring up a lot. So when you look at the label, would you take the amount of total sugar and the amount of fiber, and if you add those two up and it's not the same as the total carbohydrate, that difference there is the starch grams. Don't worry about the starch grams. Most people don't need to know about that, but just letting you know. And then one more thing that might appear. This would be sugar alcohols. So this is things like erythritol, xylitol, mannitol, and sorbitol. And these sugar alcohols provide fewer calories than regular sugar, and they don't raise blood sugar in the same way. So if there's no sugar alcohols, it's not going to be there. If there is sugar alcohols, it will be there. And just, again, it provides fewer calories, doesn't increase blood sugar the way regular sugar would, naturally or added sugars, but it can cause digestive discomfort in some people. So I'll just say this. Some people think they get food poisoning from something when it might be sugar alcohols that were in a food, a sweetened food, and caused that GI distress. All right, one more thing in this section or this part of the Nutrition Facts episode is protein. This one, I don't have a lot to say about it really because it's the simplest macronutrient on the label. There's no requirement to list individual amino acids. There's no requirement to list types of protein. It's going to be pretty straightforward whether it's animal-based, plant-based, or a mixture of both. But really, eating a variety of foods provides what the body needs. It's just pretty straightforward. It just lists how many grams of protein, and that's it. There's no more nuance to the protein. All right. So understanding the Nutrition Facts panel doesn't require memorizing numbers or micromanaging intake. It just requires knowing what the information represents. So this was an overview of the macronutrients, the total calories, the top of the Nutrition Facts panel. You probably don't need to pay attention to all of that. I tell people you may only need to look at one or two things on the label. You know best what that is. So it's just information. Don't get bogged down in the details. Now, as I said earlier, this episode covered these basics here. Next week, I'll focus on vitamins and minerals that are listed on the labels. Some are required, some are optional. And what that percent daily value means. That's on the percentages on the right side, the right column of the Nutrition Facts panel, which often can raise more questions than answers. I know I find a lot of people very much misunderstand it. All right. Now with this, labels are tools. They are tools. It's information. Understanding them helps give you more confidence, more choice, more clarity in understanding what you're eating. And with that wraps up this first episode of 2026, this first episode of the Nutrition Facts panel. Make sure you subscribed or follow this show for all the information in that it gets into your podcast feed when it's released on Friday mornings. And until next week, take care and bye for now.